Hey guys, my guest tonight, Charlotte King, is going to tell us how she can predict earthquakes, volcanoes, and other possible disasters just by hearing and how her body feels. We'll be right back. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Well, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing today? I hope you said great, because we got a great show. Wow, we got a great show today. Didn't know if we were going to get online today. StreamYard has been inundated, I guess, with shows and people using it. Or maybe the internet's been overwhelmed, but I know I was getting messages about they weren't sure if we were going to be able to get online at all. And I think those messages are still posting because they were trying to get more servers going. And I know when I did the intro earlier that I had trouble getting on to do the intro. It took me like 8 tries to film the intro. So there has been something going on, and maybe it's still the sunburn. What was going on with the suns and the supernovas and all that. Maybe that's what's doing it. Anyway, my name is Charlotte, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We're 45 strong up and down the state, which means if you do have a paranormal need, we can get to you, but it may take us a couple days. California is this really, really huge state, and so, like I said, it may take us a couple days, but in that case, that it takes us a couple days, we do have psychics on staff who can phone you and talk to you about what may or may not be going on at your home or business. And if it is something paranormal, they can settle the energy down for you until we can get out there. But like I said, it won't take us more than 1 or 2 days. That being said, you can find us all over the internet. All the social media places, TikTok, Facebook, you name it, we're there. Just Google us. Hit that keyboard and Google us, and you'll find us, okay? All right, now, speaking of the internet, if you're watching from Facebook tonight, and a lot of you are, please, if you like what you see and hear tonight, please feel free to follow. We're always looking for followers. We're always trying to build up our following. And leave us a thumbs up, happy face, things like that. Show us some love. Essentially, show us some love. And same thing for YouTube. If you're over on YouTube, we have more than 950 videos sitting over there, all of this show. Different topics. I am a journalist, photojournalist, and I like to do different types of shows. So, yeah, I like to mix it up. So if you go over there, you're going to find that there are like tons and tons of shows over there. Tons and tons. I'm really sweating in here. I don't know why today. It's just I'm really enclosed. For some reason, it's just really hot in here. If I go on the other half of the house, it's 81. So for some reason, I think my back's giving me trouble, and that's where the issue is. Anyway, you guys don't know that. TMI. But anyway, welcome. And all the social media places work the same. If you haven't subscribed over YouTube already, please do feel free to subscribe. We're always looking for subscribers, and share us. If you like what you're hearing tonight and you're seeing tonight, be sure to share the show, because we're just trying to get out there to people. And on that note, if you want to chat, in the chat room, I'll do my best to answer questions tonight. But if you want to chat amongst yourselves in the chat room, please do, because that also gets the attention of the master computers at all the social media places that we broadcast to, and that'll put us out to more people as well. Okay? Well, let's talk about my guest, Charlotte King. Another Charlotte. See that? We got 2 Charlottes tonight. Anyway, Charlotte King has a unique talent. I told you it's hot in here. Charlotte King has a unique talent. She can sense when earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and things like that are going to occur. She's got a very, very interesting, unique story to tell about how she predicted the eruption at Mount St Helens. For those of you that are old enough to remember Mount St Helens. And I talked to her at length 2 or 3 days ago, prior to this interview, and we got to know each other a little bit. And the way she does this is very unique, and it might surprise you, and you just may find that maybe you have something similar going on with you, where you can predict stuff too. Okay, this is going to be a phone-only interview, so if you want to watch me pop on screen, every 5 or 6 minutes to ask questions, or whenever I ask questions, that's great. If you want to go on about your business and listen, just have it for background sound and listen. You can do that as well. I have one listener that on Sundays when I do my ghost book read, she carries me around in her pocket while she cleans house. So, or does her laundry. So I don't mind. I like going places. So you want to have me in the car and in your pocket? I'm cool. I'm cool with that. But that's what's going to be happening tonight. Is this is a phone-in one, so I do have a photo to put up of her as she's speaking and that kind of thing. So give me a second. I'm going to have to call her, and then I'm going to set it up. I have most studios, radio studios have a phone modem thing they have that they can call. Not me. I have a box, and it never used to be a box. I used to just lay the phone down off to my right over here and put a mic on top of it with the speaker on. I have built a box now that's a soundproof box that I hope soundproof. And so now I can call people and put them in this box, and the sound should be 100% better than what it used to be when I used to do these things. So let me get her on the phone, and then we'll go from there. Okay? So give me bear with me. I'll make the phone call, and we'll get going here. First, I got to find the phone number. Okay, there we go. All right. I don't want to say it out loud for obvious reasons either. I have a Skype phone, so I have to, no matter what I do, it's got to go in manually. I just can't push the button like I used to when I had a real cell phone. So, give me a second. And I got to make sure my speaker's on, too, when I do this. It's all about the speakerphone for this little project. Okay, so there we go. There's that one. Now, I'm just afraid that when I jump back out to get the rest of the number, okay, that I'm going to lose it. Make sure I got the number right. Okay. Okay, let's see what happens. Here goes nothing. Speakerphone. And just give me a minute to get the phone put away where I need to put it for the interview and adjust it, okay? Hello, Charlotte.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing? Give me 1 second. I got to get the phone adjusted. Hang on. Got to get you in your position. Hang on. Oh, are you kidding me? Okay, hang on 1 second. Let me get this adjusted. I know it's funny. All right, can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me okay?
I'm pulling right now. Keep talking.
Okay, I'm right here.
Okay, I got you. Cool.
Okay, great.
Well, what I've done, like I told my audience, was that I'm not like Coast to Coast. I don't have these fancy telephone machines, man. So what I did was I built myself a cardboard box that's like a mini recording studio.
Okay.
And so I shoved the phone into this box underneath one of the mics, is what I do.
Okay, cool.
So tell us about you.
Okay, well, I am 77 years old.
Mm-hmm.
This started when I turned 30 back in 1976. It started with a single sound that sounded like a foghorn. And then all those sounds began to increase over time. So now I have 13 different sounds all the time. Each sound signature, and that means to me, if it's a short tone, a dual tone, a wavy tone, whatever, each signature goes with a different geographical area. And then the physical symptoms I experience, they're more able to vector into where the actual event will take place, instead of just a state or a continent or something like that.
When you started noticing this, how were you able to compare it with what was going on afterwards for your predictions?
Well, for me, mostly, I kept a calendar, and I would write down my symptoms, and then I'd watch for 3 days and see what happened. Uh-huh. And I would keep track, and every time that happened, after 3 specific events that took place after I had the same experience beforehand, both sound and or symptom, then I knew that was a physical symptom, and it was a legitimate precursor. And And so I was listed as a precursor. And that's how I built up my list of precursors on my cheat sheet.
Okay. I have a real quick question. Last night there was a earthquake here in Northern California. It was a 4.0 around midnight. Were you getting any feelings leading up to that?
Only in the respect of the temple headache, and the ears kind of pressure up a little bit once in a while with those areas. Which are you talking about? The one near, was that the one near Hollister or another area?
Clear Lake.
Which area were you talking about?
Clear Lake. My Blue Lakes.
Oh, by Blue Lake, yeah. Well, what I look at on these is that not only do I get symptoms, I follow patterns, okay?
Uh-huh.
And if you look at the Caltech data, and you look at the Northern California link, and theoretically, looking at that link, I would say 99% of those quakes are associated with the geyser activity in Northern California. Whenever those quakes reach 200 or more on that link, it'll say how many total. Then there's always going to be a quake 4.0 or greater. Mm-hmm. And so I was fully expecting a 4. In fact, I sent someone a message the same day. I said, okay, it's time for a 4 points or greater in Northern California. We're at 382 quakes. And so then the quake was the same day.
Absolutely fascinating. Tell us a little bit about Mount St. Helens and how you predicted that.
Well, that was kind of, I began picking it up with headaches that I had no idea what they meant because I never had headaches. Right. About 3 months. I started in January of 1980, and they accumulated on March 16th. I got such a terrible migraine, and I just couldn't figure out what was wrong, so I went to the doctor, and they did brain tests, they did CT scans. I had my heart checked by a cardiologist. My heart was fine. I had my ears checked by a specialist. My ears were fine, and yet I had heart pain and headaches and earaches. And then in April, I was still working at that time. I was working at the YMCA, and I noticed that my head was just pounding, and I got up to take a paper to my boss across the room, and I wanted to go take something for the pain, a Tylenol or something, and so I went up to walk over to his desk, and I walked totally in a different direction and into the wall. And I couldn't figure out what had happened or why. So I went to the restroom and I looked, and I had the pores in the backs of my hands and on my face were all enlarged. I was bleeding under the skin with petechiae. And I thought, uh-oh. So I went out and sat down, finished my work, wrote a letter to my manager and said, I'm leaving at the end of the day. I'm done. Goodbye. I can't work anymore. And so I went home that afternoon, and from that point on, I was in continuous pain with Mount St. Helens. And again, they were not really aware of it yet. And then on in March 16th, they had that first little tremor on the volcano. And I thought, okay, great. So then I was being interviewed by a person out of San Francisco, one of the big papers there, and he was sitting in the park with me, and he said, okay, now let's do a picture. And I said, okay. And he said, oh, I want you to make a face. And I said, I don't do that. And he said, but we need that. He said, we can't just do a plain picture. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. So then all of a sudden I got this intense pain in the base of my skull, and my head was pounding, and I grabbed my head and held it. Tears were rolling down my face, and he said, oh, that's perfect. And I won't tell you what I said to him. But anyway, I said it's a mountain, and I ran for the car and turned the car on the radio, and they broke into the song on the radio and said, okay, folks, he said, it's true now. We have a volcano in our backyard. We can call it that now. Mount St. Helens has just had its first ash eruption. And from that point, the 27th of March of 1980 forward, I was in sync with Mount St. Helens. And so coming up to the day before, 3 days before the eruption, on Friday, the week before, on the 15th, I was at the Lake Oswego High School up by Portland, and a student had contacted me and wanted me to do his science project. And so I said, well, what do you want me to do? He said, well, I just want you to come to class and talk about the mountain. I said, oh, okay, fine. So I drove to Lake Oswego, and I went in and to the science class and was talking to the kids and telling them about symptoms and this and that. And I had my arm laying on one of the metal tables they have in the science classes, and I could feel a vibration. And I thought, that's weird. And I got up and walked around, and I put my arm on another one. I could feel the vibration. So then I asked the kids, I said, do you feel any vibration? And they did not feel it. And so I said, well, I said, I can only tell you one thing. I said, don't go to the mountain, and something big is going to happen on the mountain this weekend. I said, just be aware of it. And I said, it may be the eruption, I'm not sure, but I said something big's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I just knew I had to leave that area. So I got out of there and headed back to Salem, and had dinner and everything, no problems. And the next day, my family, my husband and the boys went out of town. They went to, I think, fishing. And my daughter had a friend over, and we were just, doing our thing, watching TV and stuff. And they were in their room, and all of a sudden, I wanted to change the television channel. It was around a little after 8:15, and I got up to turn the channel, which was kitty corner across the room, and I walked directly across the room and into the fireplace. And I thought, uh-oh. And I sat down on the floor, and actually I was laughing because I didn't know what else to do. And I thought, I've got to call the television station in Portland, Channel 2. So I picked up the phone and called there, and I wanted the assignment editor, Doug Crombie. He wasn't working. And so I talked to somebody named Tom, who was their cameraman who I'd met on numerous occasions. And I said, okay, you guys, you want to know when the volcano's going to blow? It's going to blow in 12 hours. And I said, they said, how do you know? I said, don't even ask. I said, it's going to blow in 12 hours. And I said, log my call for 8:20 p.m. And so it blew at 8:32 the next morning. I was 12 minutes off.
Wow. Incredible. And did they call you back to talk to you more about it?
Oh, yeah. I was pretty much... I was on the shows there, very much different ones, mm-hmm. The news and the various small talk shows that they had at that time, back in 1980. They had things like Faces and Places and, AM Northwest and all that stuff. And I was on all those shows. And sometimes, one time I was on the news, we were talking, and it went on, and I guess they finally got us, they made contact with the person that was talking to me because we'd gone right through their sports time, and so they were a little uptight about that. But it wasn't unique, really. It isn't unique what I do at all. The only uniqueness I can claim to what I do is the fact that I put it together, because I'm sure that this is how people in the past, our ancestors and so on, survived, because they were paying attention to what their bodies were telling them. And this is what basically we have to do. I mean, we're always on. We don't need batteries. We don't need to be plugged in. And we're more accurate than any piece of equipment on the planet. We're more sensitive.
That's true. And you can look at animals, too, as a prime example of that, too. Because animals are good predictors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I especially watch my cats. I have 3 cats. And then I watch the ants, I watch the spiders, and then in the bigger animals, I watch the big cats, the elephants, and the bears. And those are the ones that are most sensitive, other than pigeons. And those are the animals and birds that I watch.
Is there any difference?
And earthworm.
Right. Is there any difference, like, for instance, what you feel for a volcano as opposed to an earthquake?
Yes. Volcanoes always cause pain in the base of the skull, on usually the left side of the head, because the volcanoes that bother me more are the stratovolcanoes, the ones that have a big explosive eruption like St Helens did. The ones like Hawaii, not so much. Those are more of the shield volcanoes, and the lava is more thin and easily moving without an explosion as such, not a big cloud of ash.
Right.
And so those don't bother me as much. Those are right-sided. All the stratovolcanoes are left-sided. And I pick up what I call pre-harmonic tremors. Before they start picking up harmonics, I pick them up. Probably 4 or 5 hours before they do or more. And then the harmonics for me are the signature that says it's going to be an eruption. And that's how I time the eruptions.
Okay. And when you talk about harmonics, what does it sound like?
It's not a sound on the harmonics. On this one, it's a symptom. It's like it's a grabbing and a releasing, just a harmonic, a very methodic signature of on and off. And that's, it's a really intense pain very deep in the base of the skull. And then it releases, and then it comes back, and then it releases. And if you look at a seismograph, it's the same kind of a thing. It's just a wave over and over again, and that's a harmonic.
Okay. Now you mentioned when we talked the other day, because I told everybody that you and I had a chat, get together before this, about being able to hear things. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I hear down in the 2 to 7 hertz range, and that's probably, most people hear around 20 hertz. I hear 2 to 7 and below. And I think, like I said, the foghorn effect, I hear 13 sounds all the time. Mm-hmm. You cannot hear them or record them on equipment, but you can see them on electronic equipment. Mm-hmm. You can see the signal, but you cannot record it because it's too low for audio equipment to pick up.
Right.
And it sounds like if you were blowing over the top of a glass pop bottle. That's what I hear all the time. And I hear short tones for Northern California, long tones for Southern California, dual tones for Canada, Alaska, Aleutians, Japan. I hear horn honking effects for El Salvador and San Salvador. I hear long tones with short blasts for Mexico. Each area has its own specific signature.
And your body reacts that way too with different areas, correct?
Yes, and so before I just had the sound. That was from May of '76 until '79. It was all sound, and then the symptoms began in 1979 in September when I started picking up heart and ears, and my first trip to the specialist, and that was before the quake in Cambria, Italy, that in September 19th of 1979.
And can you tell us a little bit, like around the ones in the United States, like Texas and stuff, whereabouts in your body do you feel those?
Okay, well, give me an area and I'll tell you what I feel.
Texas.
Okay, Texas for me, and this, now you got to understand, this may not be politically correct in the sense of locations because I go by how I feel, not necessarily the geology. So for me, Texas is part of the New Madrid, a little bit of the Wasatch, but mostly New Madrid. So that symptom is pain below the waistline down into the sacrum. So it feels like you lifted 200 pounds, and maybe you did not, obviously. And you can barely walk because it hurts so bad in your lower back. And some people are sensitive enough. If the quake is over a 4.5, you're going to experience what I call seismic flu. And that's the instantaneous onset of stomach and or intestinal flu symptoms that come and go within 12 to 24 hours without a fever. And that's always Texas.
Interesting. What about the Midwest?
Like, give me a location.
Kansas,
same thing. It's part of the New Madrid.
Okay. And what about the East Coast, like Maine, areas like that?
Okay, those areas are more of the, almost 100% of them will cause intestinal flu symptoms and the lower back pain, and chills if it's over 5.0 on the magnitude. Okay,
very interesting. Now, you were saying that you're probably not the only person that this happens to. Do you think that people should really, keep an eye on, I don't want to say what they're doing, but you think people should keep an eye on when they get these ailments like this and kind of jot down the dates and stuff, and maybe they can compare?
Yeah, because so many people have all these crazy symptoms and they don't know what they mean. You know, they go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, there's nothing wrong with you. But you're hurting and nothing stops that pain. And you know that there's something going on. And so the only way that the only way I could keep my sanity was to verify what I was feeling by watching what was happening. And again, it takes 12 to 72 hours after the onset of the symptoms until the event takes place. Except for Washington State, it's 84 hours. It's always one day longer for Washington.
Do you ever feel, and I know, I have psychic friends that make predictions like this. Do you ever feel, I'm not going to say odd or maybe guilty, when you make a prediction like this, if somebody doesn't take heed and listen?
Yeah, I do it. I have in the past, but then I figured out, all I can do is tell people what I feel. I don't like the word prediction. I prefer the word forecast.
Sure.
But or what I basically say is based on what I have experienced in the past. This is what I'm feeling now. And that's how I usually put it, because I can only go by past experience. There could be a major earthquake out in the middle of somewhere, and I wouldn't know it was coming because I'd never experienced that area before. I might have the symptom, but I wouldn't know where it was going to be because I'd never experienced that before. Just like, for instance, Borrego Springs, California. Okay, that's one of the areas in the Imperial Valley I watch very closely. Okay, Borrego Springs involves a lot of locations. For me, it's Mexicali, Calexico, Brawley, Westmoreland, of course, Borrego Springs, Ocatello, Gulf of California, Baja California, Mexico, and then there's probably another 6 or 8 cities around there that go with that. Well, that's sharp heart pain and sharp jabs in the stomach at the same time. They're in sync. And then all of a sudden, I had the symptoms and nothing was going on in Borrego Springs, and I couldn't figure out why. It's exactly the same symptom as India and Nepal together.
Okay.
But India and Nepal has left side earache, whereas Borrego Springs doesn't. So that's the only difference.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense.
And so there are things that happen, and I don't know until I experience them because I've never experienced them before.
Right. Well, while you were saying that, it did occur to me that it'd be interesting to, like you say, people to take note of what's going on, so maybe they can get to the point where they're able to, give warnings like you do. And it'd be interesting.
Everybody needs to pay attention to what they're feeling. And what I did was originally bought one of those, or you could even make one, but bought one of those big old-fashioned calendars with big squares. And I would write the stuff down. Now I have a whiteboard calendar, and it's a big one, and I can write things down so I can erase them. And that way I can say, okay, we had this quake here, go out 3 days, it's going to be another one here. And so that's how I do it now. Even now, today, I do the same thing after 45 years. And I still watch it that way. If you have a quake, for instance, the quake, let's see, how would I say this? We'll say the one in Chiapas, Mexico the other day, the 6.4. You go out 72 hours and you're almost always going to have the biggest aftershock. If it doesn't happen within 12 hours, it'll happen real close to 72 hours after the main shock.
Absolutely. What I was thinking too was that it would be really neat, if you're able to do this, 12 hours in advance, like you did with Mount St Helens. Imagine if there were others like you out in the world that could do this and compare notes. And then,
that's what we do.
And then the big officials, it would save a lot of lives.
Yeah, I got people all over the world I communicate with that have in 5 different countries plus the United States. And I do that exactly. I'll hear from somebody in Australia, or I'll hear from somebody in New Zealand, or somebody in the UK. And, this is what I'm feeling. What are you feeling? That kind of thing. And we compare notes. And the good thing about that is, too, even locally in California or otherwhere, is that you can verify the fact that you're not sick and dying of some dreaded disease. But you can verify with other people they're feeling the same thing.
Has it gone to the point, with the connections you have and with you doing this, that scientists are taking notice of what you guys are able to do?
They used to a lot more in 1980 than they do now, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a scientist that I'm talking to on a regular basis. We signed a non-disclosure, but so I can't really talk too much about it.
Right.
But I can say that they listen. But, it's like, well, what good can it do? We can't stop it. That's
right.
the attitude I'm feeling from a lot of people. And then again, even back before Northridge, I used to talk to the people in Los Angeles, the officials there, city officials and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, they weren't sure they would even give information if they knew, because of the fact that it could cause more death and injury, panicking people trying to leave the city than would be the earthquake.
Makes sense.
And so, you've got that. So, but, there's a fine line there about what you give out, too. I mean, you can notify all the police departments, fire departments, hospitals, all of that stuff. But, do you want, 4,500 cars sitting on the bridge if a quake hits? Not really.
Right. Understood. What do you say to people who, might be having these symptoms, like you talk about? I mean, like you say, should they start taking notice, or should they see a doctor first?
They can email me and get a free cheat sheet that lists all the areas and the symptoms and what they might experience for those symptoms if they're sensitive. Because everyone has the same symptom at the same time in the same place in their body, no matter where they live. Uh-huh. So that would be one thing they can do. They're welcome to contact me by email, and I'll send them a cheat sheet. There's no charge. And I'm always available by phone and by text and by email 24/7. And for questions, observations, concerns, whatever. One of the things I've been very concerned about is all the geothermal drilling, because it's causing a lot of the earthquake problems we have now. And, I understand it's necessary to get off the fossil fuel, but I'm not quite sure that geothermal is the way to go.
And for people that don't believe that stuff can cause problems, I worked in a foothills area where, when they were building a casino, that when they were, blowing things up to put the casino in, a lot of the water system that people were getting in their wells were cut off. A lot of the underground streams. Yeah,
I bet that. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So if people don't believe that drilling and stuff can cause that kind of problem, it can.
Well, the water plays a big role in this too. Now, before the Loma Prieta quote, and I didn't know they were going through this, and obviously they didn't know what they were feeling, but after the earthquake, I talked to people in the Santa Cruz area quite a bit, and I said, well, did you have well water? And he said, yes. And I said, well, how was your well? And he said, well, it was broken. I said, what do you mean it was broken? He said it was overflowing. And I said, how about your neighbors? He said, well, theirs were broken too. Now, they would have had a full 3-day lead time on that quake if they had known who to call, the people and the officials in the city, and say, okay, we got overflowing wells, we got the artesian effect going on. That's a major precursor for an earthquake. And they would have had some lead time had they known. They didn't know. I didn't know they were going through it, or I would have made the calls.
Absolutely. Are you able to feel quakes that are undersea?
Am I able to what?
Feel quakes that are underwater?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you bet. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because a large amount of our earthquakes are underwater. The ones that cause the tsunamis and so on.
Where do you think right now, like as far as the United States goes, where do you think this is one of the most active areas?
Most active area?
Yes.
Right now, I would say Southern California is probably the Imperial Valley would be my best guess. All of the locations that tie into there, Baja California and the Gulf of California, which ties right into the San Andreas. Also Mexicali, Temecula, Borrego Springs, Brawley, Westmoreland, that whole area is very active right now. I pay very close attention to that area. I also watch the Sierras, especially around Bishop, because if you have Mammoth and then you follow it through to Bishop, you almost always will have an earthquake within a few days near Coringa
Right.
or Avonlea or that area.
Right.
They just kind of follow a pattern, and it's real easy once you learn the pattern.
Mm-hmm. Well, with last night's earthquake, my first thought was, because the area it was in is dormant Mount Canocti, that volcano right there, and I thought, oh my gosh, what if that's starting to become active? But obviously it's not. But that's my first thought right away.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of activity going on around the world. We have multiple eruptions going on in Indonesia and Ecuador right now. Guatemala, Japan, Russia, Kamchatka, all of those areas have got volcanoes erupting. The Philippines, it's pretty active time right now. And the quakes also bear out those areas as well. Chile is especially bad because Chile is the only location that will give you the not only the physical symptoms, but it also affects you emotionally. And Chile is the only area that does that. And that actually is Chile, Bolivia, and Argentina, the whole area there. And what it causes is instantaneous, unprovoked anger. Mm-hmm. It will cause rage attacks. It will cause road rage, domestic violence, suicides, shootings, mass murders, and not the event itself, but the timing of the event of terrorist attacks. All of these tie into Chile, and it's been shown over and over again. Back in 1998, here in Oregon, we had about 30 people within less than a year die on our railroad tracks here in Salem, within a 3-mile area. And the governor's task force, Operation Lifesaver, asked me to come and speak to the group. And I did. And I showed them that every single person that died, there was a series of at least 6 or more quakes in Chile, or one larger quake in Chile within 72 hours or less after the suicides. And in those particular cases, the people would walk out on the train tracks. They would lay down and wait for the train. They would walk down the track. The train would halt, blow their whistle. They would turn around, look at the train, and keep right on walking. And most of the time it was just Salem, but then it was also in Massachusetts and California and Washington. They had the same problems about that same time. And it was classic. It was, if you see somebody, driving crazy down the road, and you're pretty sure that Chile's acting up. If you hear people screaming at each other in grocery stores, or the clerk acting crazy, it's probably Chile acting up. And it really does. It really does affect people emotionally.
The question I have is, I remember when I was growing up, and these earthquakes would always hit certain times of the year. My mother used to call it earthquake weather. Is there certain times of the year, even in these, because different countries have, are in different weather zones, but is there certain times of the year that the earthquakes tend to happen as opposed to others?
Well, I don't know. I think that May is very active, earthquake-wise. May to September is really active, at least here. But I found out. And then earthquake weather, what I do is I watch the clouds, and when they get you have your cumulus clouds, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they start pulling out and getting very thin, and they get very wispy, and sometimes they pull up into straight lines, and other times they get like smoke signals and ocean waves, real wavy. Those are what I call earthquake clouds. And so I could never exactly figure it out. And so there was a book by Helmut Treiduch, which is probably the best book ever written on animal behavior before earthquakes. Came out in 1985. It's called When the Snakes Awake. And anyway, the one of the areas in that book was called earthquake fog. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to read that. So I did. And it was actually, the information was given from Aristotle. And he had described those clouds exactly the same way I did, clear back in 822. So it wasn't anything new. I had just noticed it myself, but it wasn't anything new, just like none of this is anything new.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Understood. Do you think that people, once people become aware of this stuff, that that like I said, once people become aware of like and others like you, and maybe that they may have this ability, that it'll all come out more.
I think that once you get triggered, you're going to start picking up more and more until you have everything. I think everybody has got the potential or is sensitive. And then your body, for whatever reason, is able to throw it off. And then all of a sudden, you just can't throw it off anymore, and you start picking these things up. And that's the reason why every time there's a major earthquake somewhere, I get a whole new group of people that have become triggered because they started reacting just because of that one specific earthquake. Up until then, they weren't picking anything up. And so I think that your body can just take so much, and then it says enough is enough, and it starts reacting. And I think it's the autonomic and the sympathetic nervous system that is reacting. So a lot of people that are sensitive have issues with mitral prolapse, perhaps with their heart. They might have issues with gallbladder. They might have issues with other parts of the autonomic system. And because we've got such a sensitive autonomic system, it makes perfect sense that we'd be affected by these things.
You also spoke the other day about different types of rocks and things like that affect you.
Well, the geology in an area can make a big difference. Now, here in Oregon, where I'm at, this is mostly just, regular dirt and clay and, rock underneath. When I lived at the other side of town, when the Oregon quake hit in March of 1993, it was a 5.6. I've been in quakes in California when I lived in Sacramento, and it was nothing like this one. This was a 5.6. I was 4 blocks in from the river, and I thought the house was going to shake apart. And the patio actually dropped 3 inches.
Wow.
And it popped all the siding nails out of one side of the house and the gutter on one side of the house as well. But yet my mother, who lived on the other side of the river, not more than 5 miles from me, she hardly felt it at all. And that's because I was on reclaimed riverland. And but if you go on granite is good in the sense that it will not liquefy under pressure, so you won't have that kind of a problem, liquefaction, where your building sinks or whatever. But granite also makes you very sick, or at least most sensitives get very sick with granite. And so that would be areas like Idaho and Montana and parts of Colorado and all of those areas that have granite. Even Palm Springs, part of that area is granite. And it's great as far as stability, but it vibrates. And the vibration is what causes the physical symptoms.
Well, that earthquake that you talked about in Sacramento, I can attest to that one. I guess my house isn't quite on the line, for the fault line and all that, because my neighbor off to my right said that he could see his not only his windows shaking, but they used to have beads hanging, like in the doorways, and all the beads were swinging back and forth. We didn't have anything happen here. In fact, when he came out and told us, we were like, "What? There was an earthquake?" So I don't know, about what this house is sitting on.
I remember over in not Rancho Cordova, but over off of the Arden Road in Sacramento. I was living over there when the Coringa quake hit, and I was outside, and the water was literally sloshing out of the swimming pool. And so it was, I didn't feel the ground move as much, but I could just see it moving in the water.
When that big one hit in San Francisco during the World Series, I was working in a warehouse.
That would be the one with quake. That's the one that they had the wells break down.
Yeah. And I remember looking up, and all the lights were swinging back and forth in this warehouse. And I just went, all right, I'm just going to go to the doorway, stand in the doorway, get out, just get out of the way of this stuff until this is over. But yeah, that was really scary.
Yeah, I would think so. I wouldn't have wanted to be in that one at all, especially near the overpasses.
Oh, yeah. That one was spooky.
Yeah, that was a bad earthquake. And Jim Birkland was really right on that one when he predicted that one.
Yeah. Are we due, do you think, and I know you're not a seismologist or anything like that, but with the amount of earthquakes that we're having all over the world, do you think that we're due for a real big one at some point?
At some point, obviously. based on some of my own personal research, okay? And I'm not, like I said, I'm not a scientist.
Right.
This is not, and I can't tell you where anyway because I don't know.
Right.
I just know, looking back on data all the way to 1811, every single total solar eclipse was followed by the end of the third month with a quake 7.5 to 8.5 or greater. And so, yeah, I think by the end of June we're going to see something.
History tends to follow itself.
Well, it isn't that. I was able to go back and look at every major. I followed every solar eclipse and then watched for 3 months where the quakes took place.
Okay.
And they always followed. It wasn't any place to do with where the eclipse was.
Right.
Or the path of totality. It was just the fact that there was a major quake, just like the New Madrid quake followed, the San Francisco quake followed, Loma Prieta followed. All of those places followed within 3 months.
Now, when an earthquake hits like it did last night, and you get those feelings ahead of time, what happens after? Does your body settle down afterwards, or is it gearing up for aftershocks?
Only if it's the main shock and things are pretty calm, it'll calm down for a while, and then it might start building up for aftershocks. Sometimes, and it's really strange, I don't understand. Once in a while, I will get I get a feeling of euphoria after a big earthquake, and that's a weird way to feel, but I mean it is. It's a real euphoric feeling. Other times it's not at all. But there are some quakes that have caused me to feel that real euphoric, wow, this is awesome, the energy. And then it goes away real fast, but that's just like with the solar flares. Saturday I felt better than I probably have felt in years. But then Sunday I couldn't even get out of bed, I was so sick. So it's just the frequency of whatever is going on, and that's what it is. It isn't the location, it isn't the rock, it's the frequency.
Absolutely. So, are you feeling anything right now that you can tell us about that might be coming?
Well, I'm picking up several things, actually. I'm picking up Turkey again, and I'm picking up Chile pretty strong. Mexico, definitely. I started getting sharp heart pains at 6:05 tonight, so that's Mexico. They've eased off right now, but they'll probably come back. They just let me know they're there. And so that's Mexico. The Gulf of California, watching that area closely. And India, and also, let's see, Japan. Those are the areas I'm paying attention to right now.
It's interesting.
So Turkey, Chile, Mexico,
right.
India, Japan.
Right. It's interesting, and for me, I'm always watching. I'm always watching the Cascade Mountains as well. I'm always watching that range.
I'm only 90 miles from Mount St Helens, so I watch it very close. Mount Hood, for instance, it always causes a feeling of stomach pain, for one thing. Mount Hood always causes a stomach ache, but it also causes it's not an earache. It's like a little burst of air in your ear. It goes poof, 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 and that's always Mount Hood.
Okay.
And Mount St. Helens is not so much stomach, but it's achy heart, and then it goes into the back of the skull on that left side, and then over the eyes, right over the brow bones, and that's always Mount St. Helens.
Interesting. What about
and then you get
go ahead.
And then the Sierras in California, like Mammoth and Mono and Bishop and all those are what I call green apple bellyache. They're all over stomach ache. And then before a big earthquake, for me anyway, I call it instantaneous hard labor, because that's exactly what it feels like.
Okay. What about things like Mount Shasta or Mount Rainier?
Rainier, it has stomach pain and right side headache and heart.
Okay.
Mount Shasta, well, I used to drive by there a lot, coming back and forth, and I get really nauseated and dizzy when I get near the volcano, especially around Black Butte. I actually get sicker around Black Butte than I did around Shasta. And it's real interesting because I'm thinking, well, Black Butte, what is it? Well, it's a cinder cone. Well, obviously, but you don't think about it until you notice that Black Butte usually doesn't have any snow on it. So you know there's still heat there.
Right, absolutely.
And so that's what I'm feeling. I remember driving to Oregon from Sacramento with a friend, and Anderson and Willits and that whole area going north on the interstate, Black Butte, all of them. And every time I would start feeling something, the cruise control would go out on the car. And so when we got back, we were checking to find out why. And in that particular vehicle, they said the cruise control is ran by magnets. And so that's exactly what I had, the magnetic field. So that made perfect sense to me.
Right. When a volcano starts to erupt or act up, are there certain, like earlier you talked about Mount St. Helens, and what you felt at the onset of these. Is that a common thing, for each and every volcano, or are they all different?
I'm sorry, I didn't. Your question was what after Mount St.
Oh, my question of this was before Mount St. Helens erupted. You talked about certain feelings that you were getting physically and everything. Are those the same feelings for every volcano, or is it different for different volcanoes?
No, they're different. For instance, Indonesia is very similar to St. Helens.
Okay.
When I was really, really sick one time, it was called the Galunggung volcano in Indonesia, and I had to get sedation from the medical people because I couldn't handle the pain. But then I found out later that at the same time that the Galunggung volcano was erupting, St. Helens was in a dome building eruption at the same time. So I had a double slamming of that one. Kilauea is always right side headache and sharp pain in the heart on the left side, and right side earache, and that's always Kilauea. So they are different, yes.
Okay.
Philippines are the same. Their earaches on the right side and right side heart pain. Left side heart pain.
Now, after this show, I know a lot of my listeners are going to start taking note, of how they're feeling, and comparing notes. What do you say to them? Should they be afraid of these abilities, or should they just embrace them?
I was afraid for a long time, and then I thought, well, I could sit here and be afraid, or I could try to make it worthwhile and try to figure it out. The reason I started this was because when I reached into this, or when you reached out to me in 1976, there was nobody to ask. There was no one I could look to and say, what's going on, what's happening. So I don't want other people to go through that. And that's the reason I started doing what I'm doing now, talking about it, making a cheat sheet, having a blog, all of those things are because I don't want people to feel alone like I did that first 3 years.
Absolutely. So what do you see happening in the next few months?
Can I give my email address out?
I was just going to do that. How can people contact you?
Okay, it's Charting. That's C like Charlie. HARKING @ V like Victor, S like Sam, ER.net.
Okay.
And my phone number is area code 503-999-5745, and that's also my text number.
Wow. Okay. You're brave to put your phone number out there.
My phone number's been out there since 1980.
Okay.
Not a big deal.
Okay. So, for the next few months, do you think anything major is going to happen?
Anything what?
Anything major is going to happen in California? Do you have any feelings about it? Yeah, in the next few months.
Probably not right this minute. I haven't checked to see what the current readings are as far as the Southern California activity is. I'm looking right now as we're talking here and go on here and see if I can see how many quakes they've had in the geysers, and that'll tell me if you're going to get another quake over 4. Even without symptoms, it'll tell me that. So, okay, here we go. San Francisco, and let's go to there. And now we are at the geysers, and it says we are at 361. There's a good chance of another 4 or greater happening in northern or central California within the next 72 hours.
Okay, all right. We'll mark that down. What is next for you?
Well, right now I'm trying to do a blog and try to get more people aware of what's going on with their bodies, because more and more people are getting sensitized to it. And just being here to be available to answer questions and help explain to other people. I'm lucky. I have a doctor that listens to me and he believes me. Not everybody is so lucky. And so I like to be able to share this information with as many people as I can. It can be very debilitating. I've spent a lot of time in emergency rooms. It can be very, very, very bad at times. It can, even if you don't have a problem, it can affect the heart to where you do have a problem. And it can cause, all kinds of symptoms that you don't expect to have. A lot of people at least 6 people I know of have had their gallbladders removed because of the way their body reacts to the solar activity, and yet we still get the symptoms. We just don't have a gallbladder.
Is it hard, like when you mentioned, you were at work and all this stuff started to happen to you? Is it hard on your friends or newer friends that don't know you that well? Say you're out to lunch or something, and
I lost a lot of friends from this, and I lost jobs, and I lost my family. Pretty much, it undermined my marriage. Let's put it that way. And so that ended, and then I moved to California because I figured I needed to be where the earthquakes were.
Right.
And so I went to California there. At that point, I had already been contacted by the Office of Emergency Services in Sacramento and asked to call there, collect with every prediction I had for California. And they wanted to log them at the warning center there in Sacramento. And then I was asked to come in and be a speaker to the Seismic Safety Commission in Sacramento. The Water Resources was monitoring my calls, as well as the geologist there at Caltrans. And so I was being watched quite closely, but they wanted the information. They were open-minded. I can't say they're that open-minded anymore. Anymore, you can barely reach out and get a hold of people anymore. The people that were in the media that I knew are either retired or no longer there, and no longer anywhere. And the problem is now the ones that are in most of these positions, they weren't even alive when St. Helens erupted, so they don't really have any reference point to look at.
That's understandable. I think I'm going through the same thing, as a reporter, because if I went back to, literally go back to work as a county reporter or whatever, everybody that I knew that I had contacts with are all retired. So you got to start over. Yeah,
I had contacts with AP and contacts with UPI and all the networks, and it's just not the same. Yeah.
You have to start over with everybody, and like you say, a lot of them weren't around for certain things, so a lot of them don't believe. So
they're much less open-minded than they used to be. Let's put it that way.
I can understand that completely. What do you hope happens? You keep doing these interviews and stuff. So what is your goal about as far as getting the word out about what you do and what other people do with this?
Well, I'm still working on. This is my 4th interview since the 1st of May. Thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you for coming on.
And also, the scientists that I've been talking with, that we have in the plans, I guess is the best way to put it. We are hoping to present a dual paper to the geologists regarding this form of prediction.
Okay.
And if that gets accepted, then it's going to open a lot of doors.
Okay. Cool.
When I started with Project Migraine back in 1981 with Chris Dodge from the Library of Congress, that opened so many doors for me. And because I had, quote-unquote, the Library of Congress behind me, even though it was a volunteer project, people weren't quite so ready to shut the door in your face. And at that time, the governor of California, Jerry Brown, was quite open-minded, and it was easy to talk to people in California at that time.
Absolutely. And you also have a website, correct?
I do. It's www.thecharlottekingeffect.com. And that's just all one word, all lowercase, no point, no dots, nothing, just thecharlottekingeffect.com.
All right, Charlotte, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. We'll have to get you on another time, too. This was really cool.
Anytime, I'd love to. Thank you so much.
All right, sounds good. You have a great rest of your evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, that went really well. I enjoyed it. Sorry, the audio wasn't too bad. I had set, in fact, I got this turned up. What's going on here? Hang on. Okay, the audio wasn't too bad. I had done a different setup since the last one we did, which was a couple weeks ago, and I like this setup better. But I have to remember I changed mics because I didn't like the mic I was using here, so I had switched mics out, and so I was using a different mic. So when I'm doing it this way, I have to keep my mouth like really, really close because otherwise it'll fly out to the system I have over here. So it's just working out things. But I hope you guys enjoyed the interview and learned something. That's what this show's all about, is to try and learn something. I want to be watching my aches and pains from here on in. I get lots of aches and pains. You know, I tend to have stomach issues as well. So I want to take a hard look at those now and take notes, you know, about that. Okay, because I mean, last night I know I was dead asleep, and around midnight hit, I woke up. I couldn't get back to sleep. I don't know why. Maybe it was that earthquake. Who knows? So it's just things to look out for. Tomorrow we're back on track with Medium Nancy Matz. So we're going to be talking about what's better. What's better, having a past life regression or receiving a psychic session? So she's going to be talking about that tomorrow night. We are going to do that viewing party thing. I haven't seen anything come up on the Creature Feature site yet, so I might just do it for Saturday's show and set up a viewing party. So just keep an eye out for that. And again, I'll have some other things out and ready for you guys to peruse over the California Haunts meetup site. I ended up working here a little bit after the show last night and fell asleep, so I didn't get a chance to get the stuff up the work done that I wanted on the meetup site. But I will do that right after this show. But I want to thank everybody for coming on, you know, and I really appreciate all of you guys listening through this. And I think I've got the bugs, you know, out now that I know what I have to do when I use this setup now with this new mic. So I'll be doing that more. But I hope the audio was good enough for you guys to listen through and not have to, you know, pull your headphones off or whatever. Or if you're in your car tonight listening to the RSS feed, you know, you're not forever turning the volume up and down and whatnot and doing all and having to fiddle with the knobs. And I don't think people turn volume up and down anymore, do they? Because it's all like either on the steering wheel or it's a little pad they push. I don't know. I have a 20-year-old car, so I don't know. But anyway, I want to thank you all again for coming, and I'll see you guys tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific with Medium Nancy Matz. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. We just want to get the word out about our little old show. Anyway, thank you very much for coming, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.